My cheating wife begged me to take her back after her affair partner lost everything. I got revenge. Growing up, I was surrounded by the whispers of betrayal and heartbreak. My father's indiscretions weren't just family secrets, they were open wounds in our household. His frequent absences, unexplained late nights, and the smell of cheap perfume on his shirts were a stark contrast to my mother's unwavering devotion. I often wondered why she stayed, why she endured the humiliation. As a child, I believed in the sanctity of love, thinking it was something magical that could weather any storm. But the cracks in their marriage taught me otherwise. They revealed a harsh reality where trust was fragile, and love could be weaponized. I promised myself my life would be different. When I met Jod in high school, I saw in her what I hoped for: kindness, loyalty, and a sense of shared purpose. We built our relationship on what I thought was a foundation of mutual respect and transparency. From the day we exchanged vows, I envisioned a future free of the chaos and pain I grew up with. I was determined to provide her with the stability my parents never had. Yet even the strongest foundation can be undermined, and as I would soon learn, illusions of security are no match for the unpredictable storms of life. The night my wife Jod decided to spend it in the company of another man wasn't just another evening, it marked the end of an era in my life. She assumed I would take it in stride, that her pursuit of a fleeting thrill wouldn't matter to me. Perhaps she was correct about her excitement, but she miscalculated how deeply it would cut. What she saw as a harmless adventure, I saw as a trail that unraveled the very fabric of our marriage. I was at my desk, sipping coffee, thinking about the morning with Jod. We met in high school and mostly dated each other, though we briefly dated other people during disagreements, always coming back to one another. We gave each other our pureness before prom and married 9 months after graduation. As far as I knew, I was her only partner. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, so I hesitated. I hate scam calls, especially the ones from the IRS, but this time, it was Jod's office number. "Hi, honey," I answered. A man's voice responded, sharp and formal. "This isn't your wife, Mr. Taylor." I blinked, confused. "That's me, John Richard Taylor III, but I go by Trey," I said. The man introduced himself. "I'm Michael Hamilton, a colleague of Jod's. I need you to meet me this afternoon." His tone didn't explain much beyond that. I felt a sudden rush of concern. "Is she okay?" "She was fine when I last saw her," Michael replied, "but I have some information about her that I think you should know." "Can you meet me at noon?" He wouldn't explain over the phone. I agreed reluctantly, still unsure if this was some kind of joke. At noon, I met Michael outside Spike's restaurant. He suggested we walk to avoid being overheard, so we headed towards Central Park. "Your wife has been spending a lot of time with a man named Stan Morrison at work," he started. "They go to lunch together every day, and today they were openly discussing their plans for tomorrow night, dinner at the Hilton, followed by dancing, and then spending the night together." My stomach sank. "Are you telling me they're sleeping together?" "Yes," Michael confirmed. "He's already made reservations, and your wife is out shopping for clothes for the date." I felt numb. "How do they think this will work?" I asked, trying to comprehend. "She thinks you love her enough to let her experience another man," he said. "She believes it won't affect your marriage." I stopped walking, trying to process everything. "Why are you telling me this?" Michael's expression hardened. "I was married for 9 years. My wife had an affair, and the legal system screwed me over. Now, I'm trying to help someone avoid my situation." We talked for a while longer before he left. I was left thinking about my marriage and what the future held. If Michael was telling the truth, my marriage was over. It scared me how easily I could consider that possibility based on a brief conversation with a stranger. I thought back to my childhood and the pain my mother endured with my father. He was a heavy drinker and womanizer, having multiple affairs and openly mocking her. When I asked why she put up with it, she simply said, "I love him." One day, when I was about 11, my dad took me to his girlfriend's house. I ended up walking home after getting bored of petting her dog. When I told my mom where I had been, she didn't confront him, but 2 days later, he spanked me with a belt for breaking a plate. Looking back, I realized it was because I had snitched on him. After seeing how my mother suffered, I couldn't imagine condoning Jod having an affair. Even thinking about it made me sick. Call me whatever you want, but I wasn't going to live through what my mother did. Eventually, she left my father, and life got better for both of us. She remarried and is happy now. Now, Jody and I live in a house owned by my mother and stepfather, so I was stuck wondering, confront her or ignore it? Wait and see? As a salesman, I knew I had to be proactive, not wait for things to come to me. But in this case, if Michael was right, I didn't know Jod at all. She knew how I felt about infidelity, so I decided to take action. But how do you act when you don't even know if the situation is real? I planned out every possible scenario. I imagined the worst-case outcome and asked myself what I could live with. If I couldn't accept the worst, I would have to make another choice. I made up my mind. First, I found a private investigator. After a quick meeting and spending a lot of money, we had a plan in place. Now I had to figure out how to act when I got home. When I arrived, Jod was there. She kissed and hugged me like she always did, and I had to decide how to respond. I could act normal, which would allow her plans to proceed, or I could drop a hint about what I'd learned. But if I did that, she might just deny everything and wait for things to blow over. I wasn't going to live with that doubt. On the other hand, if I acted suspicious, she might abandon her plan. I decided to act normal. We had dinner, and I fried the pork chops like usual. Acting normal was harder than I expected, but either she was a great actress, or as Michael said, she was so confident that she didn't even try to hide anything. Around 11 p.m., I went upstairs to get ready for bed. Jod was already asleep. I showered, then lay awake, unable to sleep. At 6 a.m., she got up, dressed, and went downstairs. A few minutes later, I did the same, only to find she was already gone. We rarely left the house without kissing each other goodbye, but today was different. It was Friday, usually a good day for RV sales, but I decided to take the day off. I called my boss, then contacted the dealership's attorney to ask for a divorce lawyer recommendation. He referred me to his wife but warned me she didn't take cases from husbands who cheated. After he called her, I met with the lawyer. I explained my conversation with Michael Hamilton. She asked why I'd hired an investigator based on an unverified story from a stranger. I told her about my parents' marriage and my personal stance against infidelity. She suggested I wait and confirm Hamilton's story, adding that if Jod was as confident as he said, then she'd have nothing to lose by having an affair. I told her that I wouldn't tolerate any affair, big or small, and if Jod went through with her plan, I wanted her served by Monday. If Hamilton's lying, I'll have to eat crow, I said, but if he's telling the truth, I'll be ready. She assured me the paperwork would be ready by then. At 1 p.m., I was back at work, trying to sell a van to an elderly couple. At first, I was doubtful about selling a 45-foot motorhome to them, but after spending time with them, I realized they were in great shape and had a lively, loving relationship. I envied their energy and bond, hoping Jod and I could be like them one day. They picked out their van, and we took it for a test drive. Mr. Jacobson drove confidently, and I could barely focus on the sale, enjoying their conversation. It made me think of how I wanted my own marriage to turn out. I decided to give them a trade discount, taking a bit from my commission. They bought the van, smiling as they left. It was time to head home. I checked in with my investigator and was reassured everything was set. At 5:30 p.m., I pulled into the garage. Jod's car was in its spot, and the house was quiet. No dinner cooking. I stayed calm, placed the package from the investigator on the mantel, and sat down to wait. At 5:45 p.m., Jod came downstairs, looking stunning in the outfit Michael had described. She had her overnight bag in hand. "Wow, you look gorgeous. What's the occasion?" I asked, trying to hide the knot forming in my stomach. "One of the guys at work has been asking me out, and I thought it'd be fun, she replied casually. What do you mean? Go out with him, like a date? I pressed, the confusion creeping into my voice. Yes, she said, not missing a beat. Not a big deal, just one night of fun. We're going to dinner, then dancing, and spending the night at a hotel. I felt the blood drain from my face. You can't be serious. You're really spending the night with another man? I'm not agreeing to that. Who is this you're talking about? I demanded, struggling to make sense of it. It's no big deal, she said dismissively. Just one night of fun. I'll be back tomorrow, and it'll be like nothing happened. I might even pick up a few tricks you might like. There's no way I'm letting you go out tonight with someone else, I said firmly, my voice tight with anger. Don't be ridiculous, she shot back. I'm serious, Jod. If you go, our marriage is over, I said, each word heavy with finality. Just then, we heard a car honk from outside. That's him, she said, heading toward the door. I moved quickly, blocking her path. Please don't do this, I said, my voice pleading as I reached out. I have to go, she replied, stepping around me and kissing me on the cheek. I'll be home by noon tomorrow, and everything will be fine, she said, already heading for the door. If you leave, you won't have anywhere to come back to, I warned, my heart sinking with the words. Now you're being really stupid, she said, rolling her eyes. Enjoy your night thinking about how much fun I'm having. We'll talk tomorrow. Good night. She kissed me and left. I didn't watch her get into the car. I walked over to the fireplace, turned off the recorder, and carried the box of trash bags upstairs. It took me nearly 2 hours to remove every trace of her. I emptied her closet and bathroom vanity, even taking her birth certificate, high school diploma, and social security card from the safe. I set everything by the garage door, gathered up her family photo albums, school awards, and the Remington bronze statue from her grandfather, and cleared out all her magnets from the fridge. Stuffed everything in her car, rolled it out of the garage, and parked it on the street, leaving the keys on the driver's seat. I climbed into bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I tossed and turned for hours. Finally, I got up, made coffee, and tried watching a Hogan's Heroes marathon, but it didn't help. For the next 2 days, I couldn't sleep at all. I felt like a zombie. By 11 a.m. on the third day, I'd finished a sale with the Jacobsons, wrapping up all the paperwork. I was home by 11:45, and the locksmith had already delivered a new set of keys. The investigator was there too, handing over the video footage he'd recorded over the past 18 hours. At 12:30, I was sitting in front of the TV, watching the tapes when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door to find Jod standing there. Hey, my key doesn't work. Why is my car outside? She asked. I blocked the door. Your key doesn't work because you don't live here anymore, and your car is outside because I don't want it in my garage. What are you talking about? This is my house, she demanded, trying to push past me. I said, I told you last night that if you got in that man's car, you wouldn't have a place to come back to. All your stuff's in your car. You can't be serious. She stood there speechless, and I slammed the door in her face again. I went back to watching the tapes, but the anger inside me kept building. After a while, I glanced out the window and saw Jod sitting in her car. I went to the kitchen for water but poured myself a gin and tonic instead, my frustration growing. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't just a ring, it was constant. Relentless. I was ready to snap. I imagined tearing into her and feeding the pieces to the dogs. I opened the door, and there stood her sister, Judy, still pressing the doorbell. Jody's crying at my house. I want to know why, she said. I didn't care. Screw it, I thought and slammed the door in her face. But the bell rang again, and this time I yanked the door open and slammed her hand against it, causing her to nearly lose her balance. Ring that bell one more time and I'll break your fingers one at a time, I warned. Judy pushed against the door, holding it open. Talk to me, please. I stood there for a moment before slowly opening the door and letting her in. She looked at me. I thought you loved Jody. I can't believe you kicked her out over a stupid disagreement. Stupid disagreement? I scoffed. She told me you had a fight over a walk and that you kicked her out. Judy sighed. Well, that part's true. She wanted to go out, and I didn't, but she didn't tell you she wanted to go out with a guy from work, did she? I shook my head. Did she tell you they were planning dinner, dancing, and then a hotel room? I didn't wait for an answer and just played the audio tape I'd made the night before. Judy listened, her face falling. I had no idea, she said, shaking her head. Yeah, neither did I replied flatly. So, what are you going to do? She asked softly. Divorce her, I added almost as an afterthought. No, I said bitterly. This marriage is over. Judy nodded, then stood up. I walked her to the door. She hesitated, looking at me, and I opened it, escorting her out. The rest of the evening, and all of Sunday, I did nothing but eat grilled cheese sandwiches and drink gin and tonics. Self-pity had taken over. Then there was another knock at the door. Judy again. You said if I rang the bell one more time you'd break my fingers, so I knocked, she said. I've been talking to Jody all day. What you told me is true. I let her in, motioning for her to sit down. So, what's the deal? I asked. Nothing happened, she said. I asked, Judy nodded. She admitted it was a disaster. They went to the hotel, drank too much, passed out. She woke up, realized what she was doing, and insisted he take her home. Well, that's a story, I muttered, still not buying it. You believe her, don't you? Judy asked. I believe she and this guy spent days, maybe weeks, planning it. They spent time together, talked, grew close. He knows more about my marriage than I do. They planned to cheat, and it doesn't matter if nothing happened, that's a betrayal. Judy was silent. You don't believe her, do you? She asked. No, I replied firmly. Even if nothing happened, you're not going to forgive her, she pressed. Not in this lifetime, I said. We reached the door, and she paused. When this is over, can we still be friends? I took a deep breath. Jody and I are getting a divorce. If she fights it, it'll get ugly. By the time it's over, you probably won't want to be friends with me anymore. She smiled faintly. I see. Well, I think I'll miss you. She placed a hand on my cheek and kissed my other cheek softly, then left, closing the door behind her. Since Saturday, my phone had been off most of the time. Jody tried reaching me repeatedly, but eventually gave up. I managed to speak to her father, who tried to convince me that since nothing physical had happened with Stan, it wasn't a big deal, and I should move on. I explained it to him the same way I had to Judy. After the call, he realized divorce was inevitable and sighed before hanging up. On Monday, I called my attorney and told her about the weekend's events. I also instructed her to serve Jody with a summons that day. My attorney assured me it would be done by the end of the day. I spent the rest of the day not remembering much. Around 4 p.m., my phone rang. I saw it was Jody's office number and decided to answer. Hello, I said. Good afternoon, Mr. Taylor. This is Michael Hamilton. I thought you might want to know that there was some excitement here today, he said. Really? I asked, curious. Yes, your wife was served with a summons, and after reading the papers, she fainted. An ambulance took her to the hospital. When the paramedics left, Stan Morrison picked up the papers, looked them over, and almost fainted too. As serious as the situation was, part of me found it darkly amusing, but I had no sympathy for either of them. I'll keep you posted on any developments, Michael said. Please do, I replied before hanging up. A moment later, my phone rang again. It was Judy. Hello, I answered. Jody's in the hospital, she said. So? I replied coldly. I just thought you might want to know, she said. I didn't ask, I added more sharply than I intended. Are you really that heartless? Judy asked. My coldness comes from your sister, I answered. I warned you this would go south. This is just round one. The following weeks played out predictably. Jody tried to talk to me countless times, but I ignored her. Her parents urged me to listen, but I refused. My mother spent a lot of time trying to comfort me, but I insisted I was fine, though she didn't believe it. Michael Hamilton called daily, and I enjoyed his calls. He was the only one who knew what was going on with Morrison. Jody came to work but just sat at her desk, only meeting with her lawyer. She and Morrison barely spoke, at least not in front of anyone. Me? I was just stalling. Our lawyer set up a meeting, Jody, her lawyer, my lawyer, and me. It was the first time I'd seen her since I kicked her out. She looked thinner and worn out, and I was surprised to see Judy there. Jody's lawyer asked, "Is everything okay? Are you sure you want to be here?" I asked Judy. "I'm here for Jody," she replied. "That's not what I asked," I said, staring at her. "But fine, stay." Jody was already sitting at the table, so we all took our seats. Her lawyer started. Mrs. Taylor categorically denies the infidelity and asks for the divorce petition to be dismissed so they can work on saving the marriage. She's willing to go to counseling. My lawyer and I exchanged a glance before he spoke. If there was no infidelity, could Mrs. Taylor explain her actions that night? We all looked at Jody. "I'll be happy to," she said calmly. "A gentleman friend picked me up." "Does he have a name?" my lawyer asked. "Of course, but his name isn't important. Nothing bad happened, so no need to involve him," she repeated what Judy had told me. Champagne, dinner, more champagne, getting too drunk to have fun, passing out, and then coming home to be kicked out. "Poor misunderstanding," she sighed. "I made a mistake. I love my husband, and I want him to forgive me." I looked at Judy, who nodded in agreement. My lawyer, who had been quiet until now, asked, "Okay, let's assume everything you said is true, and no sex occurred. Was there any touching, anything that wouldn't pass the husband test?" "Absolutely not," Jody insisted. Judy nodded. My lawyer glanced at me, and I glanced back. I picked up the remote, pressed play, and a screen dropped down from the ceiling showing Jody walking to Stan Morrison's car in our driveway. He opened the door for her, and they kissed long and passionately. Then they got in and drove off. I paused the video. "Lie number 1, I said, looking around the room. Everyone sat up straighter. Jody turned pale, and Judy just stared at her sister. On Thursday, after Michael Hamilton's call, I spoke with my investigator. We planned to videotape Jod's every move on Friday night, starting when Stan Morrison arrived at our house. Thanks to Hamilton, we knew the location of their date and the room number they had booked. My investigator was able to get access to their suite before check-in. "You said there was no inappropriate touching, right?" I asked Jod. "Yes," she replied, though unsure. I pressed play. The video showed Jod and Morrison at the Hilton's restaurant, where his hand was on her rear. "Lie number 2, I said." Jod looked around. Her lawyer was reading the divorce petition, and Judy was inspecting her nails. The video continued. Jod and Morrison ordered champagne, finished it, and rushed to the elevator. I had paid my investigator $1,000 to get into their suite before they checked in. For minutes after entering, Jod was already entertaining Morrison. Then Jod screamed and ran out, followed by Judy. I paused the video. "Seems my client forgot some details," said Jod's lawyer, quickly packing up and leaving with the sisters. Later, I returned to the dealership, and Judy approached my booth. She paused for a moment before asking, "May I sit down?" "Sure," I replied, motioning to the chair across from me. We both sat in silence for a few moments. Finally, Judy broke the quiet. "You knew, didn't you?" "Knew what?" I asked, confused. When I came to your house that Saturday, she continued, her voice steady but laced with emotion, you already knew they were sleeping together. I sighed, weight settling in. Yes, I admitted. I watched the video before you arrived. Judy's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't interrupt. I pressed on. And they weren't just fooling around, Judy. They were doing it. She's my wife, and she let it happen. A long pause followed. Then she asked softly, why didn't you tell me? I thought she'd admit it herself, I said, the words coming out heavy. I thought she'd agree to a divorce. If she had, I would have spared you and your family the details. I've always liked your parents. The room fell quiet again, the tension thick. My phone rang, breaking the silence. This is Michael Hamilton, came the voice on the other end. Just so you know, your wife called yesterday and quit. She didn't even clear her desk. Thanks, I said, my voice flat. Let me know if you hear anything else. I hung up without another word. Judy opened her mouth to speak, but was interrupted by the office loudspeaker. Trey, you have a call on line 6. I nodded to Judy before stepping away to take the call. It lasted about 15 minutes, during which Judy remained still, her gaze distant. When I returned, she looked at me with a certain finality. She's gone, Judy said. What do you mean, gone? I asked. She packed up and left. Probably moved into her own place, Judy said quietly. I don't think so, Judy added. She asked me to tell your parents she was sorry for disappointing them. It wasn't just your parents she disappointed, I replied. Yeah, we know, she said softly. Judy stood up, glanced at me, and walked out. Later that night, I watched the full video again. My lawyer still had the earlier copy, but I had my own. Watching it made me numb. There was no romance, no love. He didn't care about her feelings. The pain and anger swirled in me. Part of me wanted to scream in agony, another part wanted revenge. My thoughts were a mess. I fell asleep in the chair, my mind swirling with thoughts of the betrayal. Over the following weeks, my lawyer tried to arrange another meeting with Jod and her lawyer, but he couldn't get in touch with her. A month passed, then another. I checked in with Judy and her parents. No one had heard from Jod. I thought about hiring a tracker, but my lawyer advised against it. I canceled the credit cards and took half the money. The records showed she hadn't used any of the remaining funds. If she stays gone long enough, we could file for desertion, but we'll see. Then the phone rang. Trey Taylor, I answered. Good morning, Mr. Taylor. It's Michael Hamilton. Do you remember me? Of course, Michael. How's everything going? I replied, sitting up in the chair. Not bad, he said. I just wanted to update you on my situation. Remember my divorce? Yeah, I said. Your ex was living with her boyfriend. That's right, Michael confirmed. Turns out the guy's a thief. He convinced my ex to steal from her company, and now they're both in jail. I chuckled. Good for them. Are you still at the same place? Michael asked. Yeah, I replied. That's actually why I'm calling, he continued. Since your wife left, things have been quiet. Stan Morrison's been keeping to himself, but lately, some of his calls have been interesting. Interesting how? I asked, intrigued. He was talking to your wife today. I frowned. How do you know? I overheard him say, I miss you too, Jod, Michael said. I sat up straighter. Did you hear where she is? I got her phone number after he talked to her, Michael explained. He left his phone on the desk, so I grabbed it and wrote it down. Nice work, Michael, I said, impressed. Thanks, he replied. Keep me posted if you hear anything else. I got the number, passed it to my attorney, and decided to make the call. The phone rang, and someone picked up. Hello. Hi, Judy. It's Trey. What do you need? She asked, her tone flat. Do you or anyone in your family know anyone in Florida? I asked. Why, she responded cautiously. Because I think Jod's there. Why do you care? Judy shot back. I want a divorce, and she needs to sign the papers, I explained. When are you going to ask her? Judy replied, sounding uninterested. I don't need to ask, I said. My lawyer's already handling it, but it would save him some trouble. She lives in Fort Lauderdale. Judy said almost reluctantly, why are you telling me this now? Why didn't you say anything before? Over the next few days, Judy gave me Jod's address and confirmed that Jod knew the divorce papers were ready. I gave the address to my attorney, and he immediately sent them. Judy and I had dinner and then watched the video at my house. She made it clear, though, that revenge wasn't on the table and she wouldn't sleep with her brother-in-law. Thursday morning, Michael Hamilton called again. Hey, Mr. Taylor, just a quick update, he said. Stan Morrison quit his job today. No notice, just packed up and left. He told someone he's moving to Florida. Interesting, I said. Thanks, Michael. By the way, how's everything with you? Michael asked. My wife confessed to the theft and pled guilty, I replied. She'll get a light sentence, but her boyfriend's looking at serious time. I laughed and we chatted a little longer before I ended the call. I immediately dialed Judy's number. How long have you known Stan Morrison was moving to Florida? I asked when she picked up. There was a long silence on the other end. Judy, how long? I pressed. A few days, she finally answered. How many times have they seen each other since she moved in with him? I continued. 4, she replied. She's been here twice, and he's been there twice. I couldn't believe it. You knew she was still seeing him, and you were okay with that? After everything, Trey, she's my sister, Judy said quietly. I ended the call. Moments later, Judy called again, but I ignored it. I sat in my cubicle for a while, then walked over to the repair shop to talk to the mechanics. One of them, a friend of mine, was a retired Army vet. He'd lost part of his leg and fingers in an attack, and he was one of the few who understood what I was going through. We sat outside, and I brought him up to speed. I can make sure they don't make it to Florida, he said. No, I replied. Neither one is worth going to jail over. I just want to be rid of her. I can make that happen too, he offered. I laughed. Nah, living with myself is punishment enough. We talked for a while longer until I heard over the loudspeaker, Trey, call line 4. Back at my cubicle, I picked up the phone. Trey Taylor. Trey, please don't hang up, came the voice on the other end. I hung up, walked over to the receptionist, and said, no more calls today. I'm going home. When I turned onto my street, I saw Judy's car parked in front of my house. I pulled into the driveway, and by the time I reached the garage, she was already at the front door, knocking. She remembered my threat about the doorbell, so I entered through the garage and made my way to the kitchen. She kept knocking, so I decided to answer. You're not welcome here, I said as I opened the door. Listen, she started. I shut the door in her face, this time without slamming it. I heated up some spaghetti and meatballs, then went to my bedroom where I fell asleep. By 10 p.m. the next morning, I was getting ready for work when I saw Judy waiting for me. She probably thought I wouldn't cause a scene at work. She was wrong. As I tried to pass her, she grabbed my arm. Damn it, Trey, listen, she pleaded. I pulled my arm away. You don't have anything I want here. You let her come back to me while she was sleeping with that fool over and over, and you didn't tell me. All 3 of you can rot in hell. It was a while before I saw Judy again, but she stayed in touch with my mom. By then, the whole dealership knew what was going on, making for a long day. I stuck around the dealership, trying to figure out my next move, then headed home. Later, my mom called and invited me over for dinner. I went, and she made Italian food. We ate, but the evening took a turn when she said, I talked to Judy today. Mom, if you bring up this family again, I'm leaving, I warned her. Trey, listen, there's something you don't know, she said, her tone serious. I know everything I need to know. Jod cheated, and I'm divorcing her, I replied, trying to keep my anger in check. Good, but what about the baby? She asked, her voice softer. What? I shot up from the table, stunned. I talked to her, she explained. She's pregnant. You didn't tell me, my voice cracked with disbelief. She asked us not to, Mom said. So you listened to her and ignored your own son? I shot back, hurt and frustrated. We thought you might need more time to forgive her, she said, her voice tinged with guilt. Forgive her? Have you lost your mind? Do you remember what it was like living with a cheater? I couldn't hold back the anger anymore. Honey, things are different now. People are freer to try new things, she said, trying to explain. I stormed out. Was I living in an alternate universe? My mom had been through hell with my dad's cheating, and now she was telling me cheating was okay for my wife. I loved her, but her naivety was astounding. It was like she'd buy an encyclopedia from a traveling salesman in the age of smartphones. I drove past my house and ended up at a car dealership. I had my keys with me, so I went inside, found the employee lounge, and laid down on the couch. I tossed and turned until nearly 5 a.m. before falling asleep. I woke up at 10:30, and my boss found me and put up a sign asking people not to disturb me. When I finally got moving, one of the salesmen told me that the boss wanted to see me. I wasn't feeling great, my back ached from the couch, and I desperately needed a shower, but I made my way to his office. Trey, he said, looking up from his desk, you need some time off, and I can make that happen. You remember the Jacobsons, the couple you sold the Blue Pros to? Yes, I replied. Well, last week, Mr. Jacobson had a heart attack in Vancouver. He's okay now, but they need someone to bring the carriage home, and they've asked for you. Sounds perfect, I said. When can I leave? Tomorrow, he answered. Janie will book your flight. Use the company credit card for expenses. Great, I'll get packed, I said, feeling relieved. How long should I take? Take 4 days for the trip back, he instructed. But take 10. The Jacobsons aren't in a rush, and we don't need you back too soon. Hand over your deals to Ben, and he'll handle them. When I got to Vancouver, I went straight to the hospital. Mr. Jacobson had a lot of tubes and machines hooked up, and Mrs. Jacobson was fussing over him, trying to make him comfortable while he grumbled. It was clear they just wanted to be near each other, and it made me smile. Mrs. Jacobson, it's good to see you, I said. Hi, Trey, how was the flight? She asked. I picked up Mr. Jacobson, I said. Now, be quiet, Robert. You heard what the doctor said, Mrs. Jacobson teased. I can tell him to be quiet now, and he can't argue. Doctor's orders, she winked at me. We sat talking while Robert drifted in and out of sleep. Every time we thought he was out, a nurse would come in to check his vitals or adjust his meds. Mrs. Jacobson told me the motorhome was parked nearby and that their grandchildren had been with them. Her grandson had flown home, but their granddaughter was packing to return with me once Robert was discharged. Just as we finished talking, the granddaughter walked in, carrying 2 suitcases for her grandparents. She was about my age, attractive, and clearly uninterested in me. After a brief exchange with her grandmother, Mrs. Jacobson turned to me. Darla has been driving our car for the last week. She'll take you to the bus to get it ready, she said. But Darla didn't seem thrilled. Darla, stop it. It'll be fine, Mrs. Jacobson added. She doesn't want to go back with you, Trey. She thinks she should stay with us. By the way, Mrs. Jacobson continued, your boss said you might need a few extra days and suggested traveling through Yellowstone. We promised Darla we'd do that on the way home. I'll see what I can do, I replied. As we were leaving, she handed me a letter authorizing me to take the bus across the border and kissed me on the cheek. Thanks for helping, be careful. Darla and I drove to the RV park. She kept quiet, grunting and ignoring me. I tried to make conversation, but she wasn't having it. When we reached the bus, she went inside, taking the car keys with her. I asked her for the keys, but she tossed them at me, and I barely dodged them. "What's your problem?" I muttered as I picked them up, fed up. I hooked the car up to the bus. After a short break, I considered grabbing a cold beer, so I went inside to see if the Jacobsons had any. "No beer?" I asked. "I'm not your maid," she shot back when Darla closed the fridge and stormed off. That was it. I was done with all the women in my life, Judy, my mom, and now Darla. Mrs. Jacobson was the only one still remotely civil, but even that was wearing thin. I disconnected the power and water, got in the driver's seat, and started the engine. By 8 p.m., I crossed into the U.S. and cleared customs. Darla had to step outside for the border check before returning to the bedroom. I was ready to get this trip over with. By 7 a.m. the next day, we were in Burley, Idaho. I'd stopped a few times overnight for coffee and sandwiches, but I was tired and irritable. Darla sat in silence next to me for a while before finally speaking. "I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat?" I snapped, remembering how she treated me the night before. "I'm not your damn maid," I said, pressing the gas pedal harder. She glared at me and stormed off to the bedroom. By 9 a.m., I needed to stop at a rest area. When I came back from the bathroom, she was getting off the bus. "If you get off, you can't get back on," I said, starting the engine. By noon, I was sore from driving, so I pulled into a parking lot between two trucks and collapsed on the couch. I passed out almost instantly. I woke up to the hum of the Cummins diesel engine and realized we were moving. Checking the time, I saw I'd been asleep for 5 hours. Darla was at the wheel, driving fast. After watching her for a bit, I figured she knew what she was doing. Her grandfather had obviously taught her well. I made some coffee and sat in the passenger seat. We drove in silence for 2 hours, but I started to get worried about the fuel. We'd been driving for about 25 hours, averaging 60 miles per hour, and had covered around 1,500 miles at 8 miles per gallon. We were almost out of fuel. "Hey, we should stop for gas," I said, but she didn't respond. I tried again. "We need fuel." Still nothing. Finally, she snapped. "I took care of it while you were snoring." Surprised, I went back to the couch and fell asleep again. I never saw her eat, drink, or use the bathroom during the trip, but she managed everything while I slept. After another 3 hours, we stopped at a truck stop in Dumas, Texas. It was past 10 p.m. I made sandwiches, grabbed coffee, and took the wheel, heading for Houston. I drove through the night, only stopping once for a bathroom break and some snacks. By 8 a.m., I pulled into the dealership in Houston. I needed a break, so I went downstairs to the restroom. It had been less than 40 hours since we'd gone through customs, but it felt like days. As I came out of the restroom, I saw the Jacobsons' car pulling out. The window was down, and I got an unsavory gesture from Darla. I returned it, then made myself coffee in the break room before crashing on the couch. I didn't stir until 3 p.m. When I woke up, I found a note from my boss saying he wanted to see me. I headed to his office and knocked. "You're monopolizing the break room," he said, half joking. "I got a call from Mrs. Jacobson. She wanted to know how you survived driving with her granddaughter." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. Apparently, Darla was a nightmare the entire trip. The Jacobsons didn't want her with them, and the grandson left because he couldn't handle her anymore. "Mrs. Jacobson was impressed you didn't strangle her." I smirked. "I wanted to, believe me." He laughed. "Anyway, they're glad you made it back safely. Mr. Jacobson will be discharged soon, and they want us to service the bus. They're even talking about buying it." "That's great," I said. "I thought they might sell it." He shook his head. "Not a chance. Now go home and get some rest. The break room needs a break from you." After just 3 days, it felt like I'd been gone longer. I showered, shaved, and slept for almost 30 hours. When I finally checked my phone, I realized I hadn't even thought about it. I dug through my clothes from the trip looking for it, but my phone wasn't there. I called my boss. "Hey, can you check the break room and the coach for my phone? I think I left it somewhere." He called back a few minutes later, confirming no luck. Damn, I muttered to myself. How many customer calls did I miss? I went to the dealership and caught up with a few client messages. By noon, I was heading back to my cubicle after grabbing coffee when I saw Darla walk into the break room. I quickly ducked into the staff area and waited. After about 10 minutes, the loudspeaker called my name. I took my time sipping my coffee before heading to my boss's office. He greeted me and mentioned Darla Jacobson was there to return my cell phone, which I'd left in her grandparents' car. As he was talking, his phone rang, and he stepped away to take the call. I nodded at Darla and followed her into the showroom. She held out my phone, but I kept my distance, not reaching for it right away. After a few steps, she placed it on a nearby table. "Am I really that bad?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. She left without saying another word. Back at my desk, I was processing everything when a loud crash from outside caught my attention. I saw a wreck involving 2 cars, and when I got to the scene, it was Darla. She'd been injured but wasn't in immediate danger. As medics worked on her, she looked up and smiled. "You always catch me at my best," she said before passing out. The EMTs took her to the hospital. I called the Jacobsons to update them, assuring them Darla was okay. Then I heard Mr. Jacobson's cold response, "A broken arm? Too bad it wasn't her neck." After that, Mrs. Jacobson asked me to call Darla's parents, which I did. Later, I noticed 54 messages on my phone, mostly from my mother, Judy, clients, and one from Michael Hamilton. I set up appointments with the clients and ignored the rest. I left work at 5 p.m., heading home but detouring to the hospital. At the information desk, I found Darla's room, where her parents were already visiting her. Her mom introduced me to Ralph and Joanna Jacobson. They were friendly, but Darla's dad joked about how she talked nonstop about our trip. "Darla won't stop talking about it," her mom said. "I bet," I thought, recalling how unbearable she could be. After a brief conversation, I said my goodbyes, but Darla's dad stopped me to thank me for calling them. I nodded and left, feeling out of place. Back home, I debated calling my mother but decided against it. That decision lasted for weeks, during which both my mother and Judy tried calling, but I ignored them. Even my stepfather reached out, and while I spoke with him, I cut the conversation short when he tried to pass the phone to my mother. I received the divorce papers from my attorney, sent to the address Judy had given me. Her signature was bold and written in red marker, and there was no mention of her pregnancy, if it was real. In 2 months, I'd be free. I was starting to think about staying single, which also made me think about my current celibacy. Damn it, I hadn't been with anyone in so long that I barely sat down before heading to the bathroom to shower and get ready for dinner. Just as I finished getting dressed, the phone rang. "Hello?" I answered. "Hi, Trey, it's Jod." Jacobson came the voice on the other end. "Hi, Mrs. Jacobson, how's Robert doing?" I asked. "Call me Dodie," she replied warmly. "He's doing great. He's even planning our next trip to Colorado. I'm a little nervous about how he'll handle the mountains, though." "Don't worry, Dodie, his trainer will make sure he's safe. As long as he doesn't try to speed, he'll be fine." "That's what he says. He's been reading all about mountain driving," I chuckled. "Well, I might need some volume before we go," she laughed, and I could hear the warmth in her voice. I liked Robert and Dodie, they were a good couple. "Anyway," she continued, "we're having a barbecue this Friday at 6 o'clock to celebrate Robert's recovery. Bring your wife. We'd love to meet her." I froze for a moment, realizing I'd never mentioned my personal life to them. Darla probably hadn't either. They didn't know I was almost divorced. Thanks, Dodie, I said, regaining my composure. I'd love to come. With that, I ended the call. It was a great week at work. I sold 3 vans, one of which had been a high-end bus owned by a country star. My commission was excellent. I arrived at the Jacobson estate on Friday at 6 p.m. The house was impressive, and the garage housed their boat, which I'd driven over from Vancouver. A valet parked my car, which felt strange, but I went with it. Inside, there were about 50 guests. Dodie greeted me with a hug and asked where my wife was. I'm in the process of getting a divorce, I told her. She pulled me back and said, your wife is an idiot. Then she put her arm around me, leading me to the crowd. When she mentioned introducing me to some nice young ladies, I knew I didn't belong. I decided to stay only briefly while finishing my brisket and beer. I spotted Darla running away from a guy. I didn't expect her to be here, but I should have. She grabbed my hand before I could slip away. Come on, Trey, she said, pulling me into the house and toward the library. Yes, the library. Once inside, she looked at me, clearly upset. This guy's an a-hole. I have a behavior problem and need help. I started to walk out. Where you going? She called after me. I'm leaving, I replied, heading toward the door. Before you kick me out, she asked almost pleadingly. Because I agree with him, I said, turning back slightly. He shouldn't have said that in front of everyone. Someone had to say it. Damn it, Trey, you're supposed to be on my side, she shot back, frustration in her voice. Why? The only nice thing you ever said to me was while you were lying in the street bleeding, I retorted, my words sharp. She slumped onto a chair, and I stood still, not looking at her. How's the arm? I asked, trying to break the tension. It itches like hell, she muttered. I have to use this thing to scratch. She pulled out a tool from her cast that looked like a back scratcher. I've got to go, I said, heading for the door. Trey, she called after me. Yeah? I turned back slightly. If I promise to behave, will you have dinner with me? She asked softly. I paused before replying. Darla, I'm going through a divorce. I don't need the extra stress, and I'm likely to do something that'll make things worse. So no, dinner's not a good idea. Saturday morning, I packed up and left. My mom showed up at my door later that day, and I let her in. I've been thinking it over, and I agree with you, she said. There are things we can compromise on, but faithfulness in marriage isn't one of them. You reminded me of the pain with your father, and no one should go through that. I'm sorry for pushing you to get back with Jod. I was selfish, only thinking about the baby and the idea of being a grandmother. Please forgive me. I forgave her, and we hugged. We chatted for another hour before she left. Monday morning, my phone rang. Trey Taylor, I answered. Good morning, Trey, it's Michael Hamilton. I have news. What's the news? I asked. Stan Morrison called to ask for his job back, and they said no, he replied. I laughed. Just thought you might want to know. Thanks, Michael, I said, hanging up. Now I was on a first-name basis with him. Around noon, the Jacobsons' carriage pulled into the yard. I was with customers, so I couldn't greet them right away. 30 minutes later, after walking my clients to their car, I made my way to the bus. Darla opened the door. Hi, come on in, she said. I stepped inside and turned left, avoiding the driver's seat. Once seated, I noticed the smell of lasagna from the kitchen. Darla handed me a glass of wine. Clink, she said, holding up her glass. We both took a sip. It's great, I thought. I thought I'd offer lunch instead of dinner, she said. Also, I figured it'd be better to talk privately instead of embarrassing or pissing you off in public. She made lasagna that morning and was impressed by how she handled cutting the steak with her arm in a cast. She ate half and then switched to her drink, and the waiter offered to pack the leftovers. I didn't know you had doggy bags here, I joked. First time for everything, the waiter grinned. As we left, the same guard was at the gate, but this time his expression was less amused. I glanced at Darla and joked, "I don't have many dates, and he's not used to me coming home in the same car I left in. Usually, I take a cab." When we got to her house, she invited me inside. "What would you like to drink?" she asked. "A gin and tonic," I replied. We sat in silence for a while, and then she made a move. I got the hint. We spent the night together. The next morning, I called my boss. "I won't be in today," I said. "Why not?" he asked. "I'm still on my date from last night," I replied. He laughed. The days following were unexpectedly quiet, as though the storm that had consumed my life had finally passed. The finality of my decision settled over me like a heavy but reassuring weight. I was done chasing answers and seeking closure from those who had broken my trust. I had moved on, not perfectly, not painlessly, but decisively. Darla and I continued to see each other. Her sharp edges softened with time, revealing a humor and depth that complemented her fiery nature. I discovered in her a shared resilience, a refusal to be defined by past mistakes. Our differences often led to spirited debates, but they became a source of growth rather than conflict. She challenged me in ways I didn't know I needed, and I found myself slowly, cautiously allowing hope to bloom again. Judy's presence in my life faded like the final echoes of a distant storm. I received updates through Judy, but they felt more like distant news than personal revelations. I no longer felt anger, only a strange muted gratitude for the lessons learned in the past that led me here. My work at the dealership thrived. The Jacobsons became regulars, their enthusiasm for life a constant reminder of what a true partnership looked like. They often invited me and Darla for dinners, their support unwavering as they encouraged our relationship. It was at one such dinner that Dodie leaned over and whispered, "You've been through enough, Trey. Let yourself be happy." I still thought of my mother, of her misguided attempts to smooth over my life's jagged edges. Our relationship had improved, though her mention of Jod or the past still caused tension. But I'd learned to set boundaries, to choose the people and stories I allowed into my life. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, I found myself on the Jacobsons' coach, parked outside Darla's home. She'd invited me over for lasagna, and as I stepped inside, I was greeted by the familiar scent of garlic and herbs. She smiled at me, her cast finally removed, and raised a glass of Keen. "To new beginnings," she said softly. I clinked my glass against hers. The weight of the past lifting slightly with each sip. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to find out.